Ion used to believe the strongest relationships were the quiet ones. No constant check-ins, no possessive questions, no dramatic declarations of love every other hour. What he and Maya had felt modern built on trust, space, and the understanding that two people didn't need to cling to each other to stay connected. They both had lives, ambitions, late nights, and tired mornings, and somehow, they always found their way back to each other. Their routine was simple. At the end of long days, when the city finally slowed down, they'd talk, sometimes for hours, sometimes just 10 minutes. Sometimes it was serious dreams, money, plans. Other nights it was nothing at all. Bad jokes, inside references no one else would understand, comfortable silence where neither of them felt the need to fill the gap. Ion liked that kind of silence. He believed it meant safety. He wasn't the type to demand constant updates or question every delay. If Maya said she was busy, he believed her. If she didn't reply immediately, he assumed life had gotten in the way. He told himself that love wasn't about surveillance, it was about freedom. Space, to him, was respect, and Maya seemed to appreciate that about him. At least, that's what she said. "You're different," she once told him, smiling through the phone. "You don't suffocate." Ion took that as a compliment. He didn't realize it could also be permission. The changes came slowly, so slowly they didn't feel like changes at all. Replies that once came instantly, now arrived an hour later. Late-night calls turned into, "I'm exhausted, I'll call tomorrow." Her schedule, once predictable, started shifting without explanation. Work ran late more often. Meetings popped up suddenly. Weekends filled up faster than they used to. None of it was dramatic, none of it was proof. Ion noticed, but he didn't accuse. He told himself that trust meant giving someone the benefit of the doubt, that insecurity ruined good things, that love required patience. Still, sometimes, in the quiet moments, a strange distance crept in. Maya laughed less during their calls. Her attention drifted. Conversations felt rushed, like something else was waiting on the other side of the line. "Everything okay?" he'd ask casually. "Yeah," she'd reply, a beat too fast. "Just busy," and he'd let it go, because what was the alternative? To question her loyalty over a feeling, to interrogate her over timing. Ion believed that if something was wrong, it would reveal itself. Truth, he thought, had a way of surfacing on its own. That night started like any other. He finished his work late, made tea, and reached for his phone out of habit. It was close to midnight, usually their time. He smiled when he tapped her name, already imagining her voice on the other end. The phone rang once, twice, 3 times. No answer. He waited a few seconds and tried again. Still nothing. Ion stared at the screen, confusion settling in before worry had time to form. Maya never ignored his calls. Not like this. Not without a message, not without a reason. He told himself it was nothing, a dead phone. A meeting that ran long sleep. But as the ringing died out and the screen went dark, a quiet, unfamiliar thought crossed his mind, one that refused to leave. That was the first time my call went unanswered. Ion told himself not to overthink it. The phone lay in his hand, screen dimmed, the last call unanswered. He checked the time, 12:07 a.m. late, but not unusual. Maya had stayed up later than this countless times. She had never been unreachable, not once, not without a message, not without warning. He waited 2 minutes, then 5. He called again. The ringing felt louder this time, each tone stretching longer than the last. He imagined her phone lighting up somewhere on a table, in a purse, face down. He imagined her glancing at it and thinking, "I'll call him back in a minute." The call ended. No answer. Ion exhaled slowly and set the phone down, forcing his shoulders to relax. Panic wouldn't help. Suspicion wouldn't help either. He'd built this relationship on trust, not paranoia. People got busy, phones died, life happened. Still, his eyes drifted back to the screen. He opened their chat thread without realizing it. Scrolled past tonight's "I'll call you later," past yesterday's jokes, past voice notes that once felt warm and present. Everything looked the same. And yet, something had shifted. He remembered a conversation from months ago. They'd talked about boundaries, about reassurance, about how distance could quietly destroy things if left unchecked. "If I ever don't answer," Maya had said then, half laughing, half serious, "I'll always call back. Promise." Ion had believed her. He still wanted to. He called again, straight to voicemail. This time, he didn't hang up immediately. He let it ring until the automated voice cut in, polite and final. He didn't leave a message. There was nothing to say that wouldn't sound like concern or worse. Doubt. He set the phone down and stared at the wall. His reflection in the dark screen looked calm, almost detached. Inside, though, something was rearranging itself. Not fear, not jealousy, awareness. His mind began connecting moments he had previously dismissed. The postponed plans, the distracted laughter, the way her replies had grown shorter while his stayed the same length. None of it proved anything, but together, they formed a pattern he could no longer ignore. Trust, he realized, wasn't blind. It was observant. He checked the time again, 12:21 a.m. normally. By now, Maya would have texted at least a quick apology. "Sorry, busy. Calling now." Phone died. There was nothing. Ion typed a message, deleted it, typed another, deleted that too. Every version sounded like chasen, and chasen was something he'd never had to do before. He stood up, walked to the window, and looked down at the street below. For the first time, he allowed himself to consider the possibility that this wasn't an accident. That silence, when chosen, was a message in itself. If she didn't call back, he wouldn't remind her. Ion didn't go looking for answers. He told himself that as he grabbed his jacket and stepped out into the night air, the city cool and restless around him. He wasn't chasing Maya, he wasn't trying to catch her in anything. He just needed motion, something to break the stillness of waiting. His phone stayed in his pocket, heavy and silent. The cafe near the main road was still open, lights warm against the dark street. It was a place Maya liked. She'd once said it felt alive without being loud. Ion almost kept walking. Almost. Through the glass he saw a familiar shape first, the tilt of her head, the way she brushed her hair behind her ear when she laughed. He knew those movements better than he knew his own habits. Maya sat at a small corner table. She wasn't alone. The man across from her leaned in as she spoke, his elbow resting casually near her hand. He said something that made her laugh, not the polite laugh she used in meetings, but the real one, the one that used to belong to late-night calls and private jokes. Her eyes softened in a way Ion hadn't seen in weeks. Time slowed, then stopped. Ion stood frozen on the sidewalk, the hum of traffic fading into something distant and unreal. He watched her reach for her cup, watched the man's fingers brush hers, watched how she didn't pull away. They weren't hiding, they weren't rushed, they looked comfortable, intimate. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't coincidence. It was a scene already in progress. Ion felt something shift inside him, not violently, not dramatically. There was no rush of heat, no trembling rage, just a quiet, heavy understanding settling into place, piece by piece. So this is where her calls went. He took out his phone without thinking. His hands were steady as he opened the camera. The lens captured the moment, cleanly Maya leaning forward, her smile open and unguarded. The man mirroring her posture like he belonged there. Click. The sound was soft, almost apologetic. Ion didn't zoom in. He didn't wait for a better angle. He didn't need proof for a court or an argument. He needed clarity, and he had it. For a brief second, Maya looked up. Her eyes scanned the cafe, then the street beyond, unfocused and unaware. She didn't see him. She went back to the conversation, back to the man whose attention she now held so icily. Ion lowered the phone. The world resumed its noise. Cars passed, someone laughed behind him. The city didn't care that something fundamental had just broken. He turned and walked away. The photo already saved, already permanent. In his mind, memories rearranged themselves with brutal efficiency. The missed calls, the delayed replies, the sudden distance, none of it felt confusing anymore. It felt obvious. He didn't confront her. He didn't storm inside. He didn't demand an explanation she would shape to protect herself. Because some truths didn't need to be spoken aloud. They announced themselves. Ion slipped his phone back into his pocket and kept walking, his reflection faint in the dark windows he passed. I didn't feel anger. I felt replacement. Ion didn't send the photo right away. He sat on the edge of his bed, jacket still on, phone resting in his palm like it weighed more than it should. The image stared back at him from the screen, clear, unambiguous, impossible to misunderstand. Maya's smile, the angle of her body leaning toward another man, the ease of it all. His thumb hovered over her name. He thought about everything he could say. Every sentence that rose up carried heat, questions sharpened into accusations, explanations that would turn into arguments, words designed to wound just because he was wounded. He imagined typing fast, letting emotions spill into text bubbles that could never be taken back. He deleted the draft before it was even complete. Ion understood something then. Once he spoke, the moment would no longer belong to him. It would become a negotiation, her excuses against his pain, her tears against his memory. Words would give her room to reshape the truth. The photo didn't need interpretation. He stared at the blank message field again. No, where are you? No, who is he? No, we need to talk. Nothing. Just the image. His finger tapped send. The message delivered instantly. No typing indicator followed. No reply appeared. The silence that came after was heavier than the one before, charged with awareness. On the other side of the screen, Maya was seeing exactly what he had seen, except this time she knew she had been seen too. Ion placed the phone face down on the bed. He didn't pace. He didn't refresh the screen. He didn't rehearse what he'd say when she called. He sat still, breathing slow, letting the quiet settle into his bones. Seconds passed, then minutes. The silence stretched out empty, but tense, like a held breath. He imagined the panic unfolding on her end, the scrambling for explanations, the sudden collapse of whatever narrative she'd been living in. The phone vibrated. Once, he didn't pick it up. It vibrated again, then again, Calls stacked on the screen, one after another, her name lighting up the dark room in urgent repetition. Messages followed long ones, then shorter ones, then voice notes he didn't listen to. Ion watched it all without reacting. This was the shift he hadn't planned but fully felt. For weeks, maybe months, he had been waiting for replies, waiting for time, waiting for her attention to come back. Now she was the one chasing the sound of his silence. And silence, he realized, was louder than any accusation he could have made. He didn't feel satisfaction. He didn't feel revenge. What he felt was distance, a clean, unmistakable distance forming between who he had been and who he was becoming. The power wasn't in exposing her. It was in refusing to explain what no longer needed explanation. The phone kept vibrating on the bed, desperate and insistent. Ion finally picked it up, not to answer, not to respond, but simply to stop the noise. He turned it face down again, cutting off the light. For the first time that night, his thoughts were steady. He had said everything he needed to say without using a single word. And somewhere, on the other side of that screen, Maya knew it too. The balance had shifted, quietly. Ion eventually answered, not because he owed her reassurance, and not because the silence was unbearable, because there was nothing left to protect. The truth had already surfaced. Everything that followed was just noise. Maya, he said calmly. Her voice cracked through the speaker before he could say anything else. Please listen. It's not what you think. I can explain. He said nothing. She rushed to fill the space. Words spilled out in uneven waves, denials tangled with excuses, logic stitched together too quickly to hold. We were just talking. It was a work thing. I didn't even know you were nearby. You didn't let me explain. Why would you send that without asking me first? Ion listened. He didn't interrupt. He didn't challenge her timeline or point out the obvious contradictions. He had already seen enough. Her voice was in comment, was frantic, defensive, more afraid of consequence than remorse. She shifted tactics when silence didn't save her. You know me, she said, softer now. You know I'd never hurt you like that. You're reading too much into one moment. Ion closed his eyes. He remembered all the moments she'd told him he was different, mature, understanding, how easily those words now became tools. It didn't look like nothing, he replied evenly. That was all. Maya inhaled sharply, as if the lack of emotion confused her. Why are you acting like this? Say something, get angry, yell at me. Don't just disappear. He realized then what unsettled her most. Not the possibility of losing him, but losing control of the narrative. She needed him emotional, reactive, loud. She needed his pain to soften her guilt. But Ion felt none of that urgency. He let her talk. He listened to the justifications dressed up as explanations. The way she blamed timing, stress, misunderstanding, everything except choice. Every sentence circled back to the same plea. Don't judge me yet. When she finally stopped, waiting for his response like a verdict, he spoke again. I saw you, he said. That's enough. Silence fell different from before. He could almost hear her recalculating, searching for a new angle. So what now? She asked, her voice trembling. Ion thought about the question, not about the relationship but about himself. About how many times he'd chosen patience over doubt, how he'd trusted her words more than his instincts, how quiet love had slowly turned into quiet dismissal. I'm done, he said, without cruelty. Not because of who you were with. Because of how easily you lied. Maya protested immediately. Tears appeared on cue. Apologies followed, urgent and layered, each one trying to rewind time. She spoke of mistakes, confusion, feelings she didn't understand yet. Ion felt something unexpected, then not rage, not heartbreak, detachment. He wasn't losing her in that moment. He was losing respect for her words, for her choices, for the version of her he thought he knew. Love didn't vanish instantly. It faded in the space where dignity should have lived. I won't argue, he said finally. There's nothing left to explain. He ended the call before she could respond. As the screen went dark, Ion understood the real turning point of the night. It wasn't the photo. It wasn't the silence. It was the moment he realized she wasn't devastated about betraying him. She was devastated about being seen. And that was when respect died. They met 2 days later. Not because Ion needed answers, and not because he was unsure of his decision, but because endings, when handled quietly, left fewer scars. Maya asked to talk. He agreed, choosing a neutral place, public enough to prevent emotion from spilling into spectacle. She arrived first. When he walked in, she stood up immediately, eyes searching his face for something: anger, softness, hope. He offered none of it, just a nod as he sat across from her, hands resting calmly on the table. For a moment, neither of them spoke. I've been thinking non-stop, Maya said finally. About us. About what happened. Ion waited. She took a breath, then another. I felt lonely, she admitted, as if confession alone might undo consequence. You were always busy, distant sometimes. I didn't mean for it to happen. It just did. He watched her carefully, not with resentment, but with clarity. The words sounded practiced, arranged to feel honest without fully accepting responsibility. I never planned to hurt you, she continued. It wasn't serious, I swear. It didn't mean anything. That was when Ion spoke. It meant enough to hide, he said calmly. She flinched. Maya reached for his hand across the table. He didn't pull away sharply, but he did move his hand back, resting it in his lap. The gesture said more than any argument could have. "I'm sorry," she said, tears gathering. "I panicked. I didn't know how to tell you. I didn't want to lose you." Ion nodded slowly. "And yet," he replied, "you were okay losing my trust." She opened her mouth, then closed it again. He didn't list the details. He didn't replay the photo or the missed calls. Facts didn't need reinforcement. What mattered now were boundaries, the ones he had ignored for too long. "I don't need explanations," he said. "I need honesty. And once that's gone, there's nothing to rebuild." Maya shook her head. "People make mistakes. Relationships survive worse than this." Ion met her gaze, steady and unshaken. "Only when both people are honest about them." Silence stretched between them, heavy but controlled. No raised voices, no accusations, just a slow acceptance of an ending that could no longer be postponed. "So that's it?" she asked quietly. "You're just done?" He thought about how easily he could have chosen comfort over dignity, how reconciliation would have spared him loneliness, but cost him self-respect, and for the first time, the choice felt simple. "Yes," he said, "I'm done." Maya looked down at the table, tears falling freely now. Ion didn't feel the urge to console her. He understood that compassion didn't require sacrifice. "I didn't leave because you cheated," he said, his voice low but unwavering. "I left because you lied. That was the truth. Clear, undeniable." He stood, offering no dramatic farewell, no threat, no promise to stay friends. Just finality. As he walked away, Ion felt something close to peace, not because the pain was gone, but because it was honest. He had chosen himself without cruelty, and sometimes, that was the cleanest ending of all. The days after the ending were quieter than Ion expected. No dramatic fallout, no public explanations, no late-night arguments replayed on loop, just silence wide empty, and strangely honest. His phone stayed still more often now. When it did light up, it wasn't her name, and each time it didn't appear, something inside him loosened its grip. Nights were the hardest. He'd lie awake, staring at the ceiling, memories drifting in without warning. The way she used to say his name, the sound of her laughter when she thought no one was listening. Moments that once felt permanent now floated by like unanswered questions. He didn't fight them. He let them come and go, learning that grief didn't demand reaction, it demanded acknowledgement. Ion stopped checking her social media, not out of strength, but out of understanding. Looking wouldn't bring clarity. It would only reopen doors he had already closed. Franz noticed the change in him. He spoke less about relationships. He listened more. He learned that not every wound needed a witness to heal. Some lessons settled deeper when kept private. In the quiet, he reflected on what love had meant to him and how he had misunderstood parts of it. He'd believed patience could replace boundaries, that giving space was the same as being respected, that silence was something you endured, not something you chose. He knew better now. Love without boundaries wasn't freedom, it was exposure, and dignity wasn't loud or demanding. It was calm, firm, unapologetic. There were moments he imagined confronting her publicly, telling his side, letting others know the truth. But each time the thought surfaced, it felt wrong. Exposure would only tether him to a story he was trying to leave behind. He didn't want validation. He wanted peace. So he removed her number, not in anger, but in closure. He archived the photos not to erase the past, but to stop living inside it. And slowly, almost without noticing, he stopped waiting for an apology that might never come. Silence did something confrontation never could. It allowed him to heal without reopening the wound. It let him keep his dignity intact while moving forward. It protected him from becoming somewhat reactive, bitter, or loud in pain. He realized then that walking away wasn't cowardice, it was discipline. There were still lonely moments. Healing didn't erase loss, it reshaped it. But the ache softened, replaced by something steadier, self-respect. The knowledge that he hadn't begged, threatened, or humiliated himself for closure that only truth could give. Ion didn't expose her. He didn't rewrite the past to make himself look better. He didn't seek sympathy. He simply exited her life completely and allowed that absence to say everything words never could. One evening, as he stood by his window watching the city lights blink on one by one, the thought settled fully in his mind. Some people think silence is weakness. They're wrong. Silence is what you choose when you value yourself more than being understood. It's what remains when you've said everything that matters by doing nothing at all. And sometimes, walking away quietly, completely is the loudest statement a person can make. Let me be honest with you. If you've ever loved quietly, waited patiently, or trusted someone completely, you'll understand the kind of pain that doesn't scream, it whispers. I'm talking about betrayal hidden behind smiles, small lies stacked together until they form a mountain too heavy to ignore. I've been there, and I want you to see something I learned the hard way. Love without boundaries is dangerous. It's the kind that blinds you because you believe devotion can fix everything. I loved Maya without questioning her schedule, without demanding constant answers, without interrogating her late nights or delayed replies. I thought love meant trust. I learned that love without boundaries often invites betrayal. Not every absence is innocent. Not every delay is harmless. Some silence isn't a pause, it's the space where lies quietly grow. I also learned that silence is not weakness. Many people confuse quiet with passivity, patience with fear. calm with cowardice. But I discovered that sometimes, silence is the most powerful response you can give. When I saw Maya with another man, I didn't yell, I didn't explode, I didn't beg for explanations. I didn't even reply immediately. I simply observed, captured the truth, and allowed it to speak louder than my words ever could. The power doesn't lie in confrontation. The power lies in restraint. Silence disciplines the mind, preserves dignity, and forces the other person to face the consequences of their actions. Respect is fragile. Once it's broken, it rarely returns. Maya wasn't upset because she betrayed me. She was upset because she was exposed. That realization hit me harder than any lie ever could. You can forgive behavior. You can tolerate mistakes. But respect, once fractured, cannot be reconstructed with words alone. It's not about punishment. It's about knowing that certain boundaries, once crossed, mark the end of what should have been sacred. And I knew then that no apology could restore the trust she had shattered. Walking away isn't weakness either. It isn't defeat. Sometimes, it's the only victory you can claim in a situation that tests your sense of self. When I ended things with Maya, I didn't shout, I didn't threaten. I didn't ask for closure that she had no intention of giving. I simply chose myself over lies, dignity over deception, and peace over chaos. Walking away in silence, leaving her life completely, became my statement. It was cleaner, stronger, and infinitely more powerful than any argument could have been. So here's the final truth I want you to carry with you. Your worth is not defined by someone else's actions. Your dignity is not measured by how loudly you react, and your peace is not dependent on someone else's remorse. Love boldly, yes, but love wisely. Trustfully, yes, but with boundaries. And when someone crosses those lines, don't fight to salvage what's already lost. Sometimes, the strongest move is to walk away quietly, deliberately, and without regret. Now I want to ask you, look at your own life. Have you ever stayed silent while someone underestimated you? Have you chosen patience over panic, observation over confrontation, restraint over reaction? Would you confront betrayal, or would you let the truth speak for itself? If you believe dignity is power, comment silence below. Let others see that strength doesn't need to shout. Share this with someone who needs to realize that walking away can sometimes be the loudest, most liberating statement of all. Remember this, the loudest victories aren't in revenge or exposure, they're in the quiet reclamation of yourself. And once you walk away fully and intentionally, no one can ever take that power from you.